So, first of all, you have been such a pleasure to me. I'm so grateful that I have gotten to meet you and we've gotten to have so many beautiful conversations by exchanging these super long voice notes in WhatsApp. I think doing the thing that's been so missing in so many of our experiences, expressing deeply the things that feel true and real to us. So thank you so much for being here with me and for us talking about decolonizing work in a really specific way, because you and I talk about emotions and talk about stories and all of the stories that are inside all of our experiences. And I just wondered about the wisdom you might have for this conversation around decolonization. But before we get started, tell us who you are. Tell everybody who might be listening who you are and what you do and what's your magic with storytelling and content creation and why, and just give us all the juice.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I think it's such an honor to be able to discuss with you today, to have this beautiful conversation. And to me, it kind of feels like, all vocal notes, but this time people get to be in it, they get to kind of watch how we
Here.
vibe. So yeah, thank you so much for this opportunity. So yeah, my name is Yanaëlle Ntwa and I am a creativity and content creation mentor. So I really help people with my own methodology to translate their emotions into art, and we kind of are about to speak about that because it could be also a tool for grief. And yeah, what I mean by art is simple. It is storytelling. It could be prayers. It could be songs. It could be poetry. It's everything related with words, because I feel like sometimes we can be again drained by the process of content creation because we kind of see it in a colonized way. We see it to sell, to strategize, to market ourselves, to get a return of investment. But when we are able to see that and at the same time use it for playfulness, for creativity, for expression, for soul medicine, for soul expansion, then we tap into something that is magical. And so that's what I do.
That sounds fantastic. Content creation for soul medicine,
Yeah,
starting with my own soul. Like I've
exactly.
always, as I do work with my clients and myself, it's the medicine that others ask me for. That's the medicine I need. And
Yeah.
so there's something in your journey about this storytelling that maybe others pulled from you and you realized it was medicine for your own heart and for your own soul.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about how you've used storytelling as a healing tool. Because, what in one of my earlier Decolonize Work conversations, one of the participants mentioned the whole work of grief and left it as an open question that as we unearth systemic injustice and inequities and make it explicit, we have to be prepared for the fact that we're gonna feel some kind of way, and different people are gonna feel all kinds of ways. And I've had my white friends expressing such distress, shame, grief, upset, frustration, guilt with the experience. And then also BIPOC people and people who have been traditionally marginalized feeling the persistent weight of an experience that they've had for so long.
Yeah.
But now it's all open, and we're trying, not all of it, but we're trying to process it. And one person trying to learn about it is my trauma. So there's been this, I guess, greater awareness of the emotional experience that we're having as we unearth systemic issues. And then I think another part of the conversation for me was as people talked to me about the fact that the whole human wasn't able to show up at work in a colonized way. You showed up in the package that was needed because, Big Massa or whoever said this is the way you show up. So then when we are saying, oh, let's bring our full selves to work, that's kind of like, there's all kinds of things in my full self, feelings I have and stuff like that. So that's all of the back stuff that's floating around for me when I think about processing emotions and storytelling as a tool of healing. So how have you used it? And what do you think what should we do with all of what we feel?
I think that the best thing that we can do when we want to use storytelling as a healing tool is to simply assess, do the inventory of all the stories that are in our bodies. I am really adamant around that because I feel like it's the foundation. Is to be able to observe our thoughts and so observe the stories that are going on. For example, I told you that I had postponed trips to visit my home country for the first time, and I had this big resistance that ignited a lot of anger inside of me. The first reaction for me was to go into surrender. You know, it's the will of God. What can you do? You tested positive to COVID. I mean, you cannot force it. You just have to accept it. But then the second part of me was like, what if I was, a little bit curious around my anger? What's behind my anger? What are the stories behind my anger? When I opened the Google Doc and I was just able to ask myself this question, what's behind my anger? I ended up with 2 pages of stories, of moments, situations that happened in my life that made me so angry when my test showed up positive, because to me it was again a slap in the face. It reminded me that I don't know anything about my origin story because I grew up in Belgium, but I know a lot about Belgium's story, and that makes me angry. And my anger when I saw my results, that was the anger. It wasn't just because I got a result, because we know, pandemic is so volatile. We cannot really plan things. But people that could have saw me on the surface, they'd be like, why is she so angry? But the more I got deeper, I was like, you know what? I have a reason to be angry. It's because that trip for me was an opportunity to kind of decolonize things. And now it is robbed again from me. And that's why I think that it's important for us, when we feel the frustration of coming with our whole self at work, can we ask ourselves that question? What are the stories there? What are the stories that, again, we've been piling up inside of ourselves because society for a long time showed up to only taught us to only shut up as white. We could only bring our perfect accent, like our perfect way and tone of speaking. Our hair had to be, really proper, like they couldn't be messy, like our makeup had to be plain, like all those things. But we need to pay attention to what are the as we are receiving and experiencing this openness. It's not even receiving but taking also this greater place in society because it is ours. May we pay attention to the stories in our mind, because, and we are about to, I'm sure we are about to talk about that. The stories in our mind define our reality. And when those stories are not aligned and grounded in love, they makes us sick. That's where we get all our diseases. That's where we get all of our traumas and the cycles, those generational cycles that keep on repeating ourselves. And that's why grief is so important, because it allows us to, all right, I know the stories. Now can I take the time to grieve and honor and acknowledge the pain in my heart?
Yeah, there's just so, I mean, there's like, I'm listening to it, I'm just like, wow, this is amazing. It's so powerful. One, just to acknowledge that these stories exist under
Yeah.
our skin, and that, right, telling somebody in 1 minute or 2 minutes does not express and expose the story. It's almost like each story is demanding an audience of some sort. It's demanding a certain kind of expression. And the more you use the words proper and neat, and I was like, all these ways that we've been told that our hair is not neat. It's just being itself. And so, you've seen those posts where people are saying, no, my hair doesn't fall down when it has dreads, it falls down. But I mean, no, my hair defies gravity. And somebody else called that not neat.
Yeah.
Or somebody else called, all the things. And so as we acknowledge the stories, then there's a way that they need their own life.
Yeah.
For the damage that's happening on the inside to heal.
Exactly.
So I am curious though, because, we talked about this a little bit too, like, yeah, but I'm at work though. And so I had this moment supporting a team where somebody responded to me in a way that triggered some of my ancestral stuff, and I didn't know. So I just felt my feelings. This person had big feelings that they had based on something that I said. And as I processed it, I could almost hear, like 2 generations ago, this woman crying about stepping out of her space. So somebody saying, hey, you go back into your place, right? I could feel it, but I'm leading a workshop. I am working, right? Fortunately for me, it was close to the end and I was able to, wrap it up and then go do my process. But I'm curious about what happens at work. These things will more and more want expression. And how do we as communities of workers hold this space for acknowledgement of emotion and grief, and even process stories with each other?
I think that, at work, with friends, at the restaurants, wherever we could be, because I mean, there are so many places that could, awaken those things inside of us. The best thing that we can do is honor and acknowledge what we are feeling, and taking mentally, if we can, or if we can grab a piece of paper, taking note of what happened. I think that that's the best thing that we can do if we really want to be active in our way of decolonizing ourselves, is simply to take note. And then when we have more time, it could be once a week, it can be even once a month. If you have a Google Doc where you just pile up all the stories that are going on in your body, just come up, once a month, and you're like, all right, I'm gonna do the grieving process of that. And I think that it could be so beautiful also as family we could do that. It's like once a week, once a month, what is going on in your Google Doc. What are the stories that you have been able to catch, during the month, during, I don't know, the season, and even as a community, to gather and be like, what are the stories that you've been able to pick up in your body? Because what's beautiful is that we are one. And so when somebody shares a story, in reality, it is a story of many. And so many people can recognize themselves. And sometimes, we can even use that moment of acknowledging stories that we weren't even aware that we were dealing through. But by hearing it, you're like, oh my God, yes, I agree. I can add that in my Google Doc, and we can grieve also collectively together by honoring, acknowledging that we have suffered there. And there are many ways to do it, but for me, if we want to keep going with the storytelling thing, we can make art out of it. We can really create.
Tell me more about that, because I'm imagining a team, right? Because I'm a big advocate of let's differentiate our meeting times together. So sometimes at work, you kind of have this catch-all meeting where you do some strategic stuff, you're doing some operational stuff, you're checking in on 2 micro things, and somebody's talking about their kid's birthday. And I tend to feel, no, let's designate time for particular things, and let's designate meetings. So I am about to tell people we're going to designate some meetings for just safe listening and expressing, right? This is what we do as a team. So I'm curious now about, how would we keep decolonizing our meetings so that aspects of these meetings become safe for this art making, this expression of story as a way of communal healing?
Yeah. Well, there are so many ways. The first idea that comes to my mind that I feel could be easy to do in a group session would be kind of a ride along session. So what I love with ride along poetry session or stories session is like, for example, we can all gather with our stories. So everybody is sharing what they have, piled up in their Google Doc. We can take keywords out of those things. And then can we make a grieving poem for that part? And can we also create another poem of letting go? Because grieving is, and I love that. That is what I've been learning lately. And what I feel like God has been teaching me is that grieving is accepting a new form of something. Because if I take the example of my trip, I could be so attached to the form that I wanted for my trip that I can miss the trip that God maybe has me on right now, but I'm missing it. And so there is this beautiful acknowledgement in that. For example, I had to do that. And for me, it was through a song. So it could be even a ride along with a song. I went into the wood and I started singing a song to the form that I wanted as my trip. And as I was singing, I started to sing another song of welcoming and embracing the form of the trip that I am in now. And I feel like being able to do that process, because it is grief, when somebody transition, we grieve the form that they had, and at the same time, we welcome the form that they now have. And so it's the same. Can we do poetry, songs? Can we tell stories, of how it feels, the heaviness of being Black and not knowing our origin story, of being Black? And for example, me on my Google Doc, there was this anger about being Black and speaking 4 languages and having shame around speaking my mother tongue because I have a French accent. And I was like, the world is upside down. How can I have an accent, a French accent in my mother tongue and speak fluently 4 other language that are foreign language? And
Yeah.
so we can tell stories about that. The pain that it is to speak well foreign tongues, but not our mother tongues. And so it's all about playing with that. Is all right, I need to accept the form of what it is. First of all, grieve the pain and then accept, because there is room, there is abundance there.
Right.
I speak 5 language. So it's all about
Right.
transitioning and dancing with the forms.
Yeah, it's alchemizing it. I
Yeah.
think that every change, even the changes that we want, comes with grief. And we are so, I guess, I don't know, culturalized. We're trained to not acknowledge the negative emotions.
Yeah.
And so this process that you're describing, I'm just like, it's every change. Like you could almost have it as a ritual in your life for every movement, for every, you just finished college, and then there is this grieving of whatever is finished, that form is done, and then there's this abundance that you're stepping into. And I'm thinking about all the different movements. Hopefully I'll be done with this PhD soon, and while I can't imagine what I would grieve, change comes with that. And if we can just accept that and build the muscles to do this work you're saying around the small changes, so when we're in that moment of intense emotion, we would be able to do that together so much easier.
Exactly.
I'm taking notes. So next client I have team meeting that I'm going to be facilitating. We're going to write a communal song or something. We'll see. I'm coming.
Let's grieve together.
let's grieve, and then and not rush the grief process. Let's do it, but then let's recraft. And so. Last question. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing to help business owners with this magical content creation that feels nourishing to the soul versus, mechanized and colonized. Tell us a little bit about that and how people can find you.
Yeah. Well, I feel like people are kind of tired, with content creation. There is kind of a heaviness and this pressure around, I need to create content today. Like I need to create content 4 times a week, and then we get tired and exhausted in our inspiration. It becomes a whole thing that it doesn't really have to be that heavy and that intense. And so what I love to do with my work is I simply extend the healing process into the workspace. That's really as simple as that. It's like, can you take the posture that you have when you are taking care for yourself and bringing it at the table of your workspace, and simply think the same and work the same, create content the same.
It's work
Personally,
as art. It's work
exactly.
and life as art. Yep.
Exactly. It's really that. That's what I do. For example, like I've been sharing about my trip. My trip is what I'm writing about in my content to sell my things. That's what I'm doing. To me, I don't have a healing moment time in my schedule and then a content creation time in my schedule. My whole life is art. And so I'm bringing in that healing. I'm just bringing it to the workspace. And then I'm like, all right, what will come out of this? And then I'm surprised and I'm so happy, because not only do I post content, but every time I push publish, I heal. I heal as I speak. I heal as I promote my work. And to me, it brings me the most fulfilling joy. And I know that it will help a lot of people. So that's why I love sharing this and I love teaching it.
I heal as I speak.
Yeah.
Fantastic. I think that's a great way to wrap up our conversation as we work on unearthing and healing what we see. Then, as we express in the places we choose, then we heal as we speak.
Exactly.
Thank you so much. We'll keep talking. Others just don't get to hear the rest of our conversation, but we'll keep talking. Anybody who's listening is a part of a Decolonize Work series that I've created. And when it's done, I'm gonna package it all together and invite you to share in all of the conversations if you want. Just let me know if you're interested in hearing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing with us today.
My pleasure. My pleasure.